And welcome to today's 30-minute how-to webinar, 3 ways to faster and better learning content, brought to you by Xyleme and Principal Technologies. Today's speakers, Leslie and Tracy, have over 30 years experience collectively building and delivering winning learning experiences for their clients. And they have some awesome tips for you today. By the end of today's webinar, you should have some really actionable items that will help you deliver learning at the speed that your business requires. And they've picked out their three productivity accelerators that they're going to share with you today. And they really talk to your process, your people, and your tools. So on that note, I'm going to hand it over to Leslie Farinella of Xyleme to talk about how we can work more collaboratively. Leslie?
Excellent. Thank you, Monica. I'm very excited. It's one of my favorite topics. So the first thing we have for you is how to work collaboratively. So if we think about the old world, which was dominated by desktop tools, we were pretty much tied to one designer, one project, because it was hard to share the different files. However, now with all the cloud tools that are out in the industry, we can start to work more collaboratively. So we can work in groups where we can have many specialists all working on one project. So what this does is allows us to condense our cycle times. So instead of having one person work for 1 month on a project, we can accelerate our timeline by putting 3 people to work in parallel on the project for 2 weeks. So we have the same amount of effort, but we've shortened our delivery time to the business. So these cloud-based tools provide a few advantages. One is the working in parallel. Another is we can easily share those files so that work in process. We don't have to ship those files back and forth. We don't know which one's the latest version. Everybody has it. They can access it any time. It also allows us to do online review sessions, which is a huge time saver, and I'm going to come back to that one later. And finally, it allows us to manage that content life cycle. So now we have a single source of truth, all of our files in one place. We can find them, we know where they are, we can start to reuse and leverage our existing content. We can track review dates and expiration dates so that we can do that full content management life cycle. So using these cloud tools allow us to work much faster. So Tracy's team actually did this. So throughout the webinar, Tracy's going to share her experience with her team as they work through this process.
Thanks, Leslie. So just to offer some context for the case study that I'll be sharing throughout this webinar, Principal Technologies offers custom e-learning design and development. Our size, we have about 100 individuals full-time on staff. We're based in Durham, North Carolina. And we develop interactive content using a variety of different tools. A lot of those are cloud-based. We use Storyline, Captivate, custom HTML5. But in this case that I'll be sharing, we use Xyleme as our development tool. So the case was this summer, one of our largest clients, which is a Fortune 500 technology company, approached us to write, design, and develop 8 hours of interactive content, which included filming 36 videos in less than 10 weeks. So when we mapped this out originally in an ADDIE or even an Agile method, we came up with an ideal of 18 weeks to get the project done. So we really had to rethink our process. And the first thing that we did was to restructure how our teams worked and communicated. We certainly couldn't use a waterfall method. So what we have on screen here are the different parallel teams that we had working on this project to condense that timeline. There may be some roles here that you might not think about in a traditional learning project. For example, we had folks that were curating content that already existed that we could leverage for this project. So we weren't writing everything from scratch. We did also have another group of folks that were writing what I'll call core content, that core meat that could be used across roles and across different delivery vehicles that we used for this project. That freed up our instructional designers to add those examples, stories, context, as well as to design some new interactions that would really bring this project to life in addition to the templates that we were already using. We also use the instructional designers to develop right in the tool because the tool is easy to use. They were also the ones going through and identifying what photos, videos, etc. that we needed to add that visual interest. We had a different group of developers who were creating new templates for us to use throughout the project. So these are the ones that the instructional designer had identified needing. And then throughout the project, our studio team was producing those identified assets, videos, photography, custom illustrations, things of that nature, even screen captures. And then, of course, we have the stakeholder reviews, both internal and external, and quality assurance. And then project management was that single thread. And we think of it almost in terms of a producer producing a television show, so bringing all these different roles together in a tight timeline project. So with all of these teams working together in parallel, communication between all of the groups was essential. So some of the keys to success on this project were that we had stand-up meetings at least twice a week. We started with twice a week at the beginning of the project. As the project accelerated, so did those stand-up meetings, and by the end we were meeting almost on a daily basis, only for about 10 or 15 minutes, but it really helped. We also had some collaborative spreadsheets that kept us organized throughout the project, and that was cloud-based as well. We used a Slack for our communication platform. It's similar to Skype, but because the project was so rapid, we really needed that instant communication tool. We also did use for file sharing between both us internally and with clients, Box, and then another product called Teamwork PM. But it was important while we were sharing those files to agree upon the protocol for sharing those, where they would go, where they would live, how they would be organized, as well as what to name those files, because things were moving all over the place all the time, so organization was critical. We also did use Xyleme's inherent review tool, which we'll talk about a little bit more, that allowed us to check things in and out, which helped with version control and also kept things very organized. And then we also used resources flexibly. So those teams that I just showed on that previous slide, some individuals were certainly wearing multiple hats, playing different roles. And so they would jump in and out of different roles as it was needed throughout the project. So this is one of those spreadsheets that we created. This was just in Google Spreadsheet. So you'll notice that the content this is our content checklist. So as we were writing bits of content and curating bits of content, we tracked it in the spreadsheet. So it's grouped by objective, and then it also includes link to where that content piece lives. So it's all here in one spreadsheet. There were certainly other columns as well, but the important thing is, what's needed, who's on top of it, where is it going to live, what is it called, and the status. And this is something anybody can create, very simple. Similarly, a media checklist. So this was, you can keep this in the same spreadsheet if you'd like. We did separate them out because we had so many different assets. And this included video, the photos, screen captures, etc., also grouped by the same objectives, and also who's responsible status, where they live, etc.
The review session is a huge time saver. It's one of the favorite things about our product with our customers. So similar to the Word review tool, a reviewer can highlight a section of text and add comments. The thing that makes it better than Word is it's managed in the cloud. So now your reviewers can see existing comments, and they can add on to those comments. The wonderful thing about that is you're no longer in the middle of this conversation. The reviewers can have that conversation with each other, and you're capturing, just like if you were doing an IM chat, you're capturing that back and forth and the final resolution. So now you have all of your comments in a central place, and then you can manage those. So we provide tools to help filter those comments, and then you can start to disposition them. So you can say, yes, accept these, we're going to do. Some things we always know we reject. Reject, I've heard, is maybe a harsh word for that, but those are the things like, nice idea, but we're not going to change it to purple, we're going to keep it blue, and then move on. And then you can also check those that are completed, so you can track your progress. The wonderful thing is that now you have an audit trail. So when a customer, internal customer comes back later and says, oh, why'd you do this? You can pull up and you can see the chatter about the change and why that was made.
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. We loved using that tool, and we used the Xyleme review tool for all of our stakeholder reviews. So we could continue working on other pieces as certain pieces were checked out and in review. For our internal reviews, we used a different process than we typically would, and we tried to do those live as much as possible. So literally, we would crowd in a room, maybe 4 or 5 people behind a giant monitor, and go through the course. And we would have folks in there representing copy editing, the technical writing team. We had folks in there representing, our technical QA folks, and then we had the folks that had Xyleme open and could make those changes live as we went through. So at the end of that 1 hour or 2 hours, we had done all of those reviews and made the changes. So that did condense, certainly there was no emailing back and forth, can you now review this? Everything happened live. And in fact, throughout the project, we used almost no email. So that was a huge shortcut for us. I think we all spent a ton of time in email, so to skip that step was great. We also skipped storyboarding, which we wouldn't typically advise, but in this project, that was why we used the instructional designers to do a lot of the development, so they could design while they were developing. And because we did have some existing interactions, we were able to come up with the interaction that we want, match that to the content, and develop that quickly. So that was a big time saver as well. It also skipped a review stage. Because we had a lot of backups for backups, plans B, C, and D, even though this happened over the summer, we did not have to take any downtime for folks being out on vacation. So that flexible resourcing, almost a cloud model of resourcing, was very helpful. We also, instead of waiting until the whole design was put together, or even a first draft of the course was put together before filming the videos that we needed, we were able to very quickly at the beginning, as that core content was coming together, or even as the outline for the content was coming together, to go ahead and film the videos that we needed. I mentioned we had 36 videos that we needed to write, shoot, produce, edit, and finalize in the course of this 8-week project. And so that was critical to get started on that right away. So all of those shortcuts really helped us condense that time frame.
Excellent. So as Tracy has been demonstrating, our second tip for faster and better content is to divide up the work amongst specialists and generalists. So just as Henry Ford discovered, specialization of labor allows teams to work in parallel. So because specialists are experts in the field, they can often produce higher quality work faster. This also allows you to maximize your budget because you can use a combination of in-house experts and vendors. So you can hire vendors to complete specialized work, such as doing videos or creating interactive branching simulations. You can hire a graphic designer to add some polish to your images, but then you can determine what can you do in-house. So maybe some of the copywriting, the editing, and the assessment questions you can do in-house, so you can start to maximize your budget. The difference is, because you're working in the cloud, you can pull these pieces together into one place. So it's hard to orchestrate all the different groups without having some cloud-based tool. So Tracy's going to share a little bit of how these roles looked in her project.
Yeah, so I've bucketed them into 4 different groups here: content, media, development, and then that organization and approvals bucket. So under content, we listed the content curator, that person who is identifying what already exists so we don't have to recreate the wheel, the core content writer, the copy editors, and then the IDs, which in this case became more of a storyteller, those folks writing the case studies and examples. And then, of course, we have subject matter experts. In this case, I put SMEs under both the content bucket and the organization and approvals bucket because they were reviewers for us as well. And then under media, we have all the studio team that you can see there. Development, we had folks, as I mentioned earlier, that were developing new interactions, as well as those that were taking the content that was ready to go and putting it into the development tool. We also had developers who were performing a QA role to make sure everything was working as intended. And then the organization, we had that PM or producer, project coordinator, that person's making sure everything is well organized and named accordingly. And then the stakeholders, internal and external, and the approvers. You may be looking at this and thinking, my learning team is not this large, and that's okay. I think it's just good to think in terms of, do I have these roles sort of covered with the folks that you do have? So you may have one instructional designer who is performing multiple roles. Same with your media. You may have one graphic designer who's doing all of it, and that's okay. We broke these out here so you can think in terms of how to use those specialized skills.
Excellent. And I love, one of the tools I love is the RACI chart. So many of you might be familiar with this, but when you start to get a team together, we all know it's really the communication that becomes important. So this simple chart helps to aid in that communication. So it allows you to identify who's responsible for the task, so who's going to do the work, who's accountable, who's going to be the approver, but even more importantly, it's who needs to be consulted and who needs to be informed, because those are the people that I think are usually left out. So while this chart only takes about 30 minutes to create, it saves a lot of time and headache throughout the chart. So it's a really good tool for your projects. So our third tip for faster and better content is authoring templates. So today we tend to approach every project as a new design. I think it's just the creative part of us all. Oh, I got a blank sheet of paper, now I can go create. But we can really accelerate our timelines by using a set of templates that we know we can apply to 80% of our projects. We'll always have those outliers, that's a special case, but if we really look at our projects, I think you'll find that 80% of them can follow some sort of template. So these templates also allow us to build in best practices and feedback from the learner. One of the things with templates is designers are creative, and like I just said, they love nothing better than to create something new. So many times designers will resist the idea of templates initially. So I like to use the analogy of TV and movies. So if you look at a popular TV show, The Property Brothers, it pretty much follows the same template or format week after week. So you meet the family and they've outgrown their current home and they really need to move. So they go look at their dream houses, but of course they can't afford any of those. So they're kind of, oh. Then they look at what they can afford and, oh, they're just horrible. It's just not really what they want. But then the Property Brothers step in. They say, don't worry, we can renovate this house. So they show them the design. Then they start the construction, and of course some disaster always occurs, but they work through it. And then at the end you have the reveal. So it's the same template. It's essentially the same story every week, but you're able to put your content within that structure. And I don't know about you, but I'll binge watch 3 or 4 of these in a row, and it's not boring at all. So one of the things is to help designers understand that these templates are very useful. Some of the advantages are, one, you can focus more time on the content itself. So you're not worrying about or trying to recreate that structure and over. You're really thinking about, how do I reach this particular audience? What are my great explanations? What do I really need to say within this format? You spend less time redesigning the format. You already know what that is, so you can accelerate that timeline. And you can also start to build in those best practices, those things that you know that work, into your templates. So you make sure you're using those again and again. So I like to think of the structure kind of like a recipe card. Again, if you pull any book, a recipe book off your shelf, it has slightly different formatting, but it still has the same pieces or elements to the content. So we save time by eliminating the need to map this out. But more importantly, I think we lower the cognitive load for the learner. Because the structures are familiar, it allows the learner to quickly digest the information, because they don't have to spend time trying to interpret a new navigation theme. They already understand how your content's going to be laid out on the page. This is particularly valuable for experts and performance support. So in these cases, the learners are really skimming the content to get exactly to what you need, and predictable structure makes content very easy to skim. So if we think about using tools like Xyleme, we can also start to reuse the content. So when I have some consistency and structure, I can start to eliminate that redundancy and duplication, which significantly brings down that cycle time. And also reuse allows you to more personalize your learning. So I think this is something we've all aspired to, but it's hard to maintain and sustain over time. So using technology can help you to start to create these reusable blocks of information. And what you do is you separate your content, like how to log in, how to access your billing system, from your context, which I think is a story. So we know that storytelling resonates with our audiences, but it's hard to maintain different stories for each audience. So we can start to wrap that reusable content in with this story, and because we have the technology, it makes it a sustainable process. And what happens is now, if I need to update the login, I update in one place, and it will propagate that change to all places it's been used within your different outputs.
And it was important to Leslie and I that we provide you things that are actionable so you can go and use tomorrow. And one of those things is this link on screen that has links to it's a link to a blog article that contains places that you can find templates if you don't already have them. Of course, Xyleme has them built into the tool, but there are certainly other sites that offer templates, storyline templates, etc., that you might use.
Excellent. So we've mentioned Xyleme several times throughout the webinar. So if you're not familiar with what Xyleme does, Xyleme is a learning content management system, or LCMS. So basically it enables you to do some of the things we've talked about today. For example, you can work collaboratively in the cloud. You can share your templates, do content versioning. We also have the review session we talked about. And really our most powerful feature is that ability to start to reuse your content and bring down that redundancy. I think if you were, we have one customer went through and they found they had 12 different segments on how to do hand washing. They were in the health services field. So you'll find there's a lot of redundancy in your content. So it helps to bring that down. So today we've shared with you our 3 ways to faster and better content learning. We hope it was useful. And so we have plenty of time left. So Monica, what type of questions do we have out there?
Hi, we have a couple of questions for Tracy. First of all, someone asked if we could put that link into the chat pane. So I will be typing that as we go here and putting it in there for you so you can add that to your list of takeaways. But Dan was asking specifically about video production, because you said you had 36 videos that you needed to produce in a very short amount of time. Yeah. And his curiosity was mostly about, managing the change in the production. How much change did you have to manage, and how did you manage it?
So change as we were developing, because we were developing early is my guess there. We knew we had to factor that in by jumping in and starting to film those things early. Some of the things we did is we filmed a little bit more footage than we thought we might need. So if we needed it, we could, if we needed to make changes to what we had edited together, we already had the footage there in place. But it was important. And a thing that really helped is we had our subject matter experts on site live as we were filming those videos as well. So even because they knew the process that we were ultimately training on, they were able to say, make sure we video this, make sure we video that. So that helped as well. And it was also helpful that our video crew is on staff, so we could run downstairs and refilm if we needed to, which made it more fluid.
Yeah, that's cool. The question that came up was also really around how do you define content really around when it comes to reuse? And maybe, Leslie, you might want to take this one. Kind of asking about the unit of measure. You showed a content block, which obviously is a very small unit and potentially, could be as small as a paragraph, to other units of measure. So talk a little bit about reuse and the size of those kind of reusable parts.
Very good question. I think of it as a pyramid. So the biggest part of reuse isn't actually the sexiest, but it's your front matter, your back matter, your copyright. I don't know about you guys, but when I have to go change the year on the copyright across all the materials, it takes a lot of time. So that's one level of reuse, which is really easy to accomplish. The next level, I think, is more of your topic level. So you might have, for example, how to wash your hands. That's a big topic. Or you might have, active listening skills, which pretty much you can pick up and put different places, particularly if you just think a little bit about how you write it. Then the next level of reuse would be more like what I think of the how-tos, which can be used within a story, because usually story is I'm a clerk and now I need to log in, or I'm out in the field and now I need to log in. But you have different stories around it, but also it's what you might pluck out for your job aids, right? So it might be your quick reference guide, your job aids, it might be in other materials. So those how-to statements. Another category I think of is like many organizations have their vision statements, or these are the 3 pillars of leadership, or there are things that you think about are everywhere. So a good rule of thumb is think about those things. If somebody came to you tomorrow and said, oh, we're going to update this, that you just groan and you think about, oh my gosh, that's in 100 different places. And now I've got to go find all those things. Those are the things you want to reuse. You can go too crazy with it. If you try to do too much, it's not sustainable, but there are huge efficiencies being made just for finding those types of things.
I would just add real quickly that we didn't cover it today, but an important part of the project is to identify who those learners are. There's different personas, so you know which content is going to be needed for each role.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a really good point. On that, a couple of process questions for you, Tracy. One was around the type of Agile process you were using, Scrum Agile. The question came up around the LLAMA, Llama approach. I'm not familiar with that.
Llama, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say we used essentially a hybrid of Agile and Llama and SAM, I guess all of those together, in that we divided things into bite-sized pieces that we could work in over sprints, and we certainly had the stand-up meetings and those elements. We did not use a Kanban tool. We used a different tool internally called Teamwork PM, but it achieved the same types of things. So yes, that method did work to our advantage on this project.
Yeah, well, now you have shown, or you have proven, right, to this client now that you can deliver learning in half the time, right, than you thought it would take. So the question is around, what kinds of concerns do you have now going forward, setting such a high bar?
Not really concerns. I mean, at the same time this project was going on, we had dozens of other projects also going on. And so necessity became the mother of invention on this project, but now seeing what the results were, we're able to go and apply those across the organization. So while we started just with this one project, and that would be something I might advise if you are interested in trying it, try it on a project and see how it goes. But for us now, this is enabling us to increase the pace on all our projects, which of course is always a good thing.
Yeah, that's great. A question, I think the question that, well, probably the last question we can answer is about how Xyleme fits in with the other tools that you have in your toolbox, such as Storyline, and maybe even a little bit about how you got your people up to speed so that they could work Xyleme into the production mix.
Yeah, that's a great question. We did use Storyline as well in this project. There were some simulation interactions that we wanted to have that we developed in Storyline and then just imported them into Xyleme. So I didn't mention that here, but we did have a Storyline team as well working on some of those. How we got up to speed, honestly, the Xyleme group was great at offering training and upskilling us. We got up to speed well before this project, but I would say within a period of 2 to 4 weeks. But we had daily assignments that we were all working on, so we were learning by doing. But it was pretty easy to use the tool, especially if you're familiar with other learning tools. It's not real hard.
Well, that's great. Well, we're out of time, and thank you guys both for sharing your experiences and your expertise with the audience. Be clear, we will be sending out a link to the recording as well as a PDF of the presentation. So if you want to go ahead and use some of those ideas within your own groups, we certainly would definitely advise you doing so. These guys have worked really hard at coming up with a process that lets them deliver learning at the speed of business. And if you would like any more information on either of the companies, please visit our websites and reach out to us through our Contact Us button on Xyleme as well as on Principal Technologies. Again, thanks to Leslie and to Tracy for your time today, and thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for coming.